There we go.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
We are trying to be back.
There was a whole bunch of stuff that happened.
Yeah, we won't bore you, but we decided to try a slightly different format that requires less research so that we're more likely to record more often. So cross your fingers for us and let's see what happens.
Yeah, we're gonna be doing this time. The other things that we said we were going to talk about, we probably will get to eventually.
Yeah.
In this format.
Mm-hmm.
But at the moment, since COVID's out.
Yeah, we figured COVID is kind of the theme of the day, so we might as well talk about it.
Yeah. So our plan is, in general, for these to cover some stuff, just chat about it, and then the other thing that we're going to do is at the end have something that will leave you on a more positive note, because the last thing we want to do is just depress you and make you feel terrible and then just be like, bye.
Yeah. So a little aftercare, if you will.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's get started. What's today's topic?
Well, COVID.
Yes, but what about it?
It's the end of the world.
No, that is not.
So, there's a lot of stuff that many of you who watch this, all 5 people who watch this, we love you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of inequality in the world. You know it, I know it, she knows it, the cat knows it. But cis heterosexual white men who are middle class don't.
Less often. There's not none of them, but less.
Yes.
Or fewer.
I think they're less.
Okay, carry on.
Not that I think any less of them. I'm terrible. But anyway. Yeah, so all of a sudden, COVID has struck, and now the people who weren't affected by these things are being affected by them through second and third iterations of things, right? Like if somebody can't do work. You lost me. So not being able to pay rent wasn't that big a deal to a lot of people, and now it is.
Yeah.
So now they're experiencing it. And then also, having everything cut down to essential workers means that a lot of people aren't getting goods that they expect.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so all of a sudden people are being confronted with the reality of capitalism and industrialization in the way that it is at the moment.
Yep. And I think one of the things that's crucial to notice about all this is that while all of us, no matter what amount or types of privilege we have, right? Because most of us have some kinds of privilege and some kinds of non-privilege, or
Yeah, like we own a house. That's nice.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
But we also have disabilities and have a different relationship to whiteness and to lots of things, right?
We're white adjacent.
Yeah, exactly.
Honorary white.
So, I think people like us, even people like us who don't have our politics, are being forced to recognize some kinds of things that people of color and working class people have had to confront ongoingly.
Yeah.
And people of color and working class people and people with disabilities and stuff are in a whole other
they're in dire
world
straits.
of dire trouble. So there's a lot to talk about in terms of COVID-19 and what's happening to people at the moment.
COVID-19 and the new reality.
Yawn. But true.
Yeah, but I mean also it's like the name of every article now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's 3 main things that we might cover. We don't have to.
Go ahead.
But I think solidarity,
mm-hmm.
right? Like, are the people who are now being confronted with this new reality,
mm-hmm.
are they actually going to understand it? Or, because in the past, there were suffragettes who were abolitionists.
That's right.
Right? So,
that's right.
So, like, is this going to succeed in any way?
Mm-hmm.
And how will it succeed? Like, how do we make it do that?
Yep.
2, the people who are like, my freedom, I wanna... Right?
Yeah, the anti-lockdown people, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
And 3, what we are seeing, like some of the evidence and some of the information and reports that are going on about what's happening to people who are multiminority.
Yep.
Right? Like, what's going on in the indigenous communities, what's going on in the homeless communities, what's going on with people who are disabled or immunocompromised.
Yep.
Or black or...
Yeah, yeah. So, where do you want to start?
At the beginning. The beginning is a very good place to start.
Okay.
I have no idea. Where... Which one do you want to get out of the way first?
I'm easy. Let's just pick one.
Okay.
What's the quickest, do you think?
I think the quickest is probably the trash garbage people.
Okay, go ahead.
So, I call them trash garbage because they are. But also, they're completely brainwashed.
Well, not only are they brainwashed, but they're funded by people like the Koch brothers, right? So they are pawns of people who are moving absolutely against their self-interest. And they're being freaked out about not being able to work because they want to pay their bills, but they don't want government handouts. But the fact of the matter is that they're working on behalf of a government that has bailed out enormous corporations and has done jack shit for the people who are showing up as thugs with bulletproof vests and
raiding government buildings.
Yeah, with machine guns and high capacity magazines and bulletproof vests and swastikas, right? Like there's a kind of mismatch in who's doing what and who is being mobilized on behalf of the enormously wealthy. That is kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I have always believed about white supremacy, and it's not everybody's going to agree with me, and I totally understand, and I also will admit that what I'm about to say does not necessarily mean that putting the effort in is the most efficient.
Okay.
A bunch of asterisks. But for me, I have sympathy for white supremacists in the same way that I have sympathy for Middle Eastern terrorists.
Yep.
In so much as young, vulnerable people who are isolated.
Yep. And who feel completely disenfranchised.
Yeah. Are preyed upon by manipulative, abusive people who utilize them to enact violence. They're death cults.
Yep.
Right?
That's exactly right.
The suicide bomber and the school shooter are the same person.
That's very smart. I think that's right. I think it's incredibly sad.
Yeah.
It's profoundly, profoundly sad.
And it's somehow an implication of toxic masculinity in ways that I don't really know what to do with.
Also true. Okay, so that's the, jackbooted thugs.
Yeah, and so...
Do you have more to say about that, or can we move on to the next thing?
We can move on to the next thing with one, goodbye.
Okay, go ahead.
So, obviously, jackbooted thugs, that's some sympathy for the devil. They're still the devil, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
That being said, there are people like that pastor.
Who, Frank Schaeffer?
Is that the name of the pastor?
The one that I showed you the other day?
The one who died?
Oh, no.
There are people who are being led astray by these people who are dying because of it.
There was a black pastor in Virginia who told his flock not to worry about COVID-19 because God would protect them. And then he died of COVID-19. And so, that there's lots to say about that, but not least, his congregation was also very much at risk because of his advice. So, lots of people are putting other people at risk in all kinds of ways.
Yeah.
Because of their flawed analyses.
Yeah. So, the bad people out of the way.
Okay. What's next?
So we've got, there was two more.
Yep.
There was what we can see and how we create solidarity. So I think we'll end on create solidarity because that can transition into good news.
Okay.
So let's do what is happening to minority communities.
Mm-hmm.
So, as many of you will know, communities that are at the bottom of the food chain.
So, indigenous communities, homeless communities, poor African American communities, poor white communities, etc.
Yeah, and
people with disabilities.
Yeah, and in England here, the travelers, the Romani and Irish travelers, right, refugees, right. So all of these communities.
Oh, people in prisons.
People in prisons. Oh my God.
Yeah.
ISIS, not ISIS. Sorry, ICE. The people who've been caught by ICE.
Oh yes, the people who are detained by
ISIS.
By the American fascists.
Yeah, ISIS.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Anyway,
that's so Freudian. But yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, there are huge swathes of every country who are in absolutely dire straits.
Uyghur, Rohingya, there's the Adivasi. I can't remember how. I'm dyslexic, so I can't remember how it's.
I don't know, so I can't help.
Indigenous, forest peoples and indigenous peoples in India.
Yeah. But so, there's a number of things that are happening. First of all, people who live very, very fragile existence, paycheck to paycheck kind of existence, are now flat broke because they don't have work.
Yeah.
Secondly, they don't have good health care, which means, and they don't have good access to healthy food practices, so they are quite vulnerable in terms of contracting COVID-19. I think communities are being destroyed that we are not hearing about in the news at all.
I mean, my Twitter has a bunch of stuff about it, but that's only because I went out of the way to find people who are specifically campaigning about it. You don't see it in the mainstream media.
You should link to it in the box.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Follow me on Twitter if you want to be depressed.
Yeah, well informed but depressed.
Well informed but depressed. There's a number of pieces of data that have come in. So in the beginning, there was no data collection on who was getting infected, but Michigan, I think, was the one who did it first. In America, at least. I don't know about other countries. And they started collecting data on races, on which races were affected. And black people made up a certain percentage of the population, a much lower percentage than
the number of people who died, the percentage of black people who died from the percentage of people who died that were black
was higher than it should be.
Much higher than their presence in the population at large.
Yeah. So
and that's true of all minorities. Black people are the worst, both in the UK and the US. But all Latino, South Asian, all minority communities,
disabled, elderly, poor. There's a bunch of stuff about, so for example, I'm gonna out you. Mom's immunocompromised.
Yeah, I have a form of what's called an indolent lymph cancer. And so
not to be confused with insolent.
Yeah, really. That might be more fun. But the government tells me that I am the highest vulnerability category. I am extremely vulnerable, and so I'm not supposed to leave the house, and I'm not supposed to be in the same room with these guys, and
Oops.
all kinds of stuff.
It's fine. I don't leave the house.
So yeah, we did a lot of things to be careful in the first couple of weeks.
We stayed separate.
We stayed away from each other, but now it feels sort of safer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been quite challenging.
Yeah, and one of the things that she has had as a way to help you...
to help my immunity function is...
white blood cells from...
IV immunoglobulin infusions, which are immune materials collected from many other people's blood and put together and then redistributed to people like me who have...
the ultimate communist.
Yeah, really.
My blood is communist.
It's interesting because I think of it as vampiric, but I'm happy with the communist metaphor as well.
You said redistributed,
yeah.
and that just automatically makes me think of that Marxist quote.
Yeah.
A commie and an anarchist. Well,
there you go.
Stand in front of a camera.
Normally I get them every 4 weeks, and I haven't had them since the beginning of the lockdown. And I've basically been sick consecutively since the beginning of the lockdown. Not terribly sick. I got a sore throat. A few days later, I recovered and I got another sore throat. A few days after that, Mo got a tummy bug, and so I got it.
You're welcome.
Then after I got over the tummy bug, I got another sore throat. Then I got a bladder infection. I just have been mildly ill the whole time, and I'm really run down.
Yeah.
I'm really, really run down.
And on top of that...
So, let me just say, I'm very grateful that I'm going to have an infusion on Tuesday. There's a positive end to this individual story, but not collective stories.
No. But on top of that, if you were unlucky enough to get infected while you've gone...
Yeah. No, I really was worried. I really was scared.
Yeah. Oh. This is left unity.
That's right. Commies and anarchists come together. I mean, I think there's a lot to think and talk about that has been things that we've known that have had quite bright lights shone on them during this pandemic.
Yeah.
And I think, there's lots of positivity that has come out of all of this. People organizing and doing things, which is the next thing we want to talk about.
Yeah.
And so I think, we have to hope that is another long-term outcome of the pandemic.
Yeah. One of the things that I think people aren't yet talking about all of this data is that... So, for example, the number of deaths in England, I don't know about other places, I assume it's the same, but the number of deaths in England that aren't related to COVID have gone up.
Yes.
And that's because people are afraid of getting infected, people are not wanting to put pressure on the system. I mean, it's a number of things.
Lots of people are not going to the hospital when they need to go, either because they're afraid or because they're being good citizens and not taking space away from COVID patients, and therefore dying of heart attacks.
Yeah, and
right?
on top of that, there are also people who are being turned away.
Yeah.
Because there's just simply not the resources, and so now people are making decisions that are kind of eugenicist, but also, what do you do?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not being an apologist for the people who are making these decisions, but also, I don't think it's easy.
Of course if you only have 5 ventilators and 6 patients, somebody's making a decision, and there is nothing political that can do anything about that, right? There's no, political evaluation about organizing to get more ventilators that belies that you have that problem right in front of you right this minute.
Yes, but also, conversely, people aren't organizing to... that's not true. We're going to come to that.
Right.
But in some cases, people aren't organizing to... Right? There are these problems, and people are like, well, oops, you are a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Yeah. But I mean, the people who are making those decisions don't have any choices, right? They're right there on the front line.
Oh yeah, the frontline people, which actually brings us to
one of the more positive things we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
There's been lots and lots and lots of appropriate attention internationally on the risks and the really impressive work that doctors and nurses are doing to take care of us, despite the fact that some of them have had to leave their families to live somewhere else to protect their families from getting infected. So
no physical contact. I mean, already isolation is.
Yeah. So we are absolutely on board with the kind of thanks that are due to doctors and nurses. But as many doctors and nurses themselves have been saying, there are a host of other people who need to be thanked that we are not talking about and thinking about. The people who make the meals in the hospitals, the people who clean the hospitals, the respiratory therapists, the people who answer phones, there's a host of people who are on the front lines in ways that we are not seeing or thinking about.
People who
healthcare
are delivering
aides, all of the people who work in nursing homes, and there's lots of different people who work in nursing homes.
And separately from those, people who are still being on the farms, people who are delivering food, people who are still doing the nursing home work. Did you already say that?
I said nursing home.
Okay,
It's all right.
All that kind of stuff, right? There are tons of people who are keeping the system going on a skeleton crew.
All of the delivery people who deliver the food that I order on from Amazon because I can't go out shopping.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people making our lives possible and putting themselves at risk, and many of them have very fragile jobs and very low pay and
not much choice.
If they get sick, their families are in very dire straits indeed. So I think, we want to encourage everyone to be thankful to those people too, and to be mindful of them and to see them.
Yeah, and
help them be visible.
And if you have the spare resources, some kind of mutual aid, even if it's just tipping more or...
Yeah, people are suggesting tipping 3 and 4 times more because of the risks that people are taking, all kinds of stuff like that.
And there are, places where you can, give money, or if you want to make masks for your community or stuff like, there's lots of that kind of stuff, which is the... Go ahead.
Anything you can do, right? Contributing to food banks, contributing to homelessness organizations, like anybody any organization that you see or know of or are inclined to support, now is the time. We are, people who are fragile in our society are at their most fragile, right?
Yeah.
This is dire. So please be kind and generous.
And if you are one of the people who's vulnerable, don't feel guilty.
No, that's right. That's right.
Which actually brings us to our positive news, which is a bunch of the stuff that's being done that's mutual aidy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my beard is all crooked.
My favorite one is a group of people in Southern California, in Los Angeles, who have taken over homes.
The moms.
Yeah. So most of them are single moms, and they have, with the help of, I think, the Democratic Socialists of America, I'm not quite sure,
a tolerably progressive group.
Yeah, and there's an organization specific to them. I can't remember, not to DSOC, but to the people who are occupying the houses. I can't remember the name of it, but they are people who are homeless, single moms who are homeless, and they're occupying houses that were bought, in some cases, over a decade ago for a transportation line. They're owned by California State Transportation body, Caltrans. And nothing is happening with them, and they're standing empty, and so they're occupying them, and they have informed Caltrans that they're occupying them,
offered
and that
to pay rent.
They're happy to pay rent that they can afford on their salaries. One of the women that I saw interviewed was an elder care worker, and she said, I cannot afford rent in Los Angeles. I just can't afford it. But that doesn't mean I don't want to pay my way, pay the
amount somehow.
an amount that I can afford and still feed my child.
Yeah, and
so it's a super interesting movement. We'll put a link in the
Mom's promising a lot of things.
Description box. That's 2 links. How much?
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm just gonna forget, and they'll have to remind me.
Yeah, well, whatever. I'll figure it out.
What was it? Oh, that movement is actually older than COVID, but
yes.
Now, because of COVID, they have sympathy.
Yes. Sympathy from people outside and around them, so they're getting more support.
Yeah, I mean, some of the neighbors are trash garbage, but
yeah.
But many of them are not.
That's right. That's right. Other good news?
Yeah. So there's a bunch of mutual aid stuff that's going on.
Explain what that is for people who don't know.
So mutual aid was, I think, originally created by Peter Kropotkin, bread book man, one of the bearded anarchists.
Kropotkin, I think his name is. I'm not sure.
I know.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, and it's been co-opted. It's been adopted by
other people. Not just anarchists.
Yeah. And I encourage everybody to adopt it. It's like charity, only better.
Because
it doesn't presume that you are... it doesn't presume a need for desperation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you just have a need, you have a need. Right? You don't have to be at the bottom rung. Right?
Yeah.
Much like food, not bombs. If you are a student or homeless, you might need a free meal.
Mm-hmm.
They're 2 different levels, but you still deserve it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't presume, like, it doesn't gatekeep need.
Yeah.
It also doesn't presume that you're better than the person who needs help.
Right. And in the kinds of mutual aid things that I've been involved in, there's always an assumption that even people who need, also have something to give.
Yes.
Right? So the idea is that everybody participates and anybody can get what they need out of it, but that everybody gives what they can.
Yeah,
right?
And whatever you give is...
whether it's labor or money or resources or...
I mean, and that's one of the things that's a problem with charity is always straight up cash, which is fine if you can't go there in person.
Well, it's not always straight up cash, but it's always giving something to someone without a solution. It's like that old thing about giving somebody a fish or teaching them how to fish.
Right. In this case, it's, are you giving them a fish or a fishing rod?
Yeah, or are you giving them a fish or a bunch of people who will haul a net with them?
Yeah.
Right? It's a kind of collectivist sort of thing.
Yeah. But so there's been a lot of mutual aid stuff. I think in the indigenous communities, there's been a lot of, like, getting food and water and masks to people from people who have more privilege to the reses.
Mm-hmm. Reservations.
Yeah. In the case of some homeless people, there's been hotels.
Yes, some councils in the UK have contracted with hotels to house homeless people so that they can social distance and it's not isolation or quarantine, but whatever the other one is. I guess it's just social distancing, but to have some place to stay, to be distant. And in some cases, that's turning into some interesting projects, including hotel owners who are talking about hiring some of those homeless people to work after the
and really changing their perception
epidemic
of
is over.
people.
And yes, absolutely.
Because one of the videos we saw, we might link it if we can find it.
Yeah.
The guy started out very presumptuous, and he's realized that was...
Yeah.
It wasn't that simple.
Yeah.
In America, there was a guy who had a motel who couldn't rent it out to people, because obviously. So he just
opened it up to homeless people.
Yeah.
Very cool. Then in other places, there have been kind of organized renter strikes,
Yes.
which is super interesting.
And
The question of rent and how people are supposed to pay rent, especially people who live in the the very fragile gig economy, how those people are supposed to pay rent is very unclear. And at least in the U.S. and the U.K., the aid that's been made available through the governments is just it doesn't qualify as a pittance, much less as adequate. And
it's like your grandma's money.
Yes, it's like grandma's birthday money.
Yeah.
And so, people are trying to find other ways to organize around the issue of rent, which is super interesting.
And a lot more wildcat strikes and a lot more union organizing, even in the U.S., which is notoriously anti-union.
Yeah. So it's 30 minutes, and that's our deadline. So we succeeded in leaving you with some hopeful news. And we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, and, I think next time we see you, if we are still talking about COVID, we'll talk about ways to make those kinds of things permanent.
Yes, to institutionalize some of the ephemeral changes that have happened because of the pandemic.
If not, then we'll just talk about media representation.
Or something else. Be safe, be smart.
Be happy.
Take care of each other. Mind yourselves, and make sure you're having some fun.
Yeah.
See you soon. Bye.
Oh, you didn't pause it.